I froze mid-step, my champagne glass suspended in air. Across the dimly lit room, Emily's hand lingered on the tall stranger's arm a moment too long. Her laugh, musical and light, carried over the ambient jazz. I hadn't heard that laugh in months. "James? There you are." Emily weaved through the crowd toward me, her emerald dress catching the low light. Her eyes sparkled with an energy I hadn't seen in a while. "What do you think of the venue? Isn't it magnificent?" The converted warehouse space in downtown's arts district was indeed impressive. Exposed brick walls adorned with modern art, crystal chandeliers hanging from industrial beams, waiters gliding through with trays of appetizers I couldn't pronounce. "It's not your usual style," I managed, taking a sip to steady myself. "Whose party is this again?" Emily waved dismissively. "Just some work connections." "Speaking of which," she leaned in, her perfume enveloping me, "you look handsome, but I told you to wear your navy suit. This charcoal one doesn't quite fit the aesthetic." I glanced down at myself. "You never mentioned a navy suit." "I absolutely did. Last Tuesday over breakfast." She gave me that look, the one that questioned my memory rather than her own. "Anyway, mingle. There are some fascinating people here." Before I could respond, she disappeared back into the crowd, leaving me alone with my champagne and confusion. I was certain she'd never specified navy. In fact, she'd been vague about the entire evening, mentioning the party almost as an afterthought this morning. I found a spot near a window overlooking the city lights and observed. Emily moved through the crowd with practiced ease, stopping to chat, laughing at appropriate moments. She seemed to know everyone, though she'd never mentioned these people before. Then I spotted him again, the tall man with the expensive watch. He stood in a corner, his attention fixed solely on my wife. When their eyes met across the room, something passed between them. Something intimate. Something secret. I drained my glass and set it on a passing tray. A waiter immediately replaced it with a fresh one. "Thanks," I muttered, not taking my eyes off Emily. She excused herself from her current conversation and walked directly toward the tall stranger. They exchanged a few words before both disappeared down a hallway. My stomach nodded. 23 minutes. That's how long she was gone. I counted every second, rooted to my spot by the window, nursing my champagne that had long since gone warm. When she returned, her cheeks were flushed and she'd reapplied her lipstick, slightly darker than before. "Where did you go?" I asked when she finally made her way back to me. "Bathroom line was ridiculous," she said, smoothing her dress. "And I ran into Melissa from accounting. You know how she can talk. I thought you work remotely with the accounting team." A flicker of something, annoyance? Concern? Crossed her face before she smiled. "We met at the Christmas party. Anyway, are you enjoying yourself? You've barely moved from this spot. Who was that man you were talking to? The tall one in the gray suit?" Emily's expression remained perfectly neutral. "Which one? I've spoken to dozens of people tonight. The one with the platinum watch. You seemed familiar with him." She laughed, but it wasn't the same laugh I'd heard her share with him. This one was practiced, controlled. "James, I work with these people. Of course I'm familiar with them. Are you feeling all right? You seem tense." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." "When can we leave?" "We just got here." "But if you're really not feeling well?" She studied me carefully. "We can go in an hour. I need to say goodbye to a few people first." Just then, the tall stranger appeared at the edge of my vision. He glanced our way, then quickly turned and engaged someone else in conversation. "What's his name?" I pressed. Emily sighed. "Whose name?" "The man you were just looking at." "I wasn't looking at anyone specifically, James. But if you mean Marcus, he's new to the leadership team. Very talented, apparently." "Marcus?" She'd never mentioned a Marcus before. "I'm going to get some air," I said, handing her my glass. "Don't be long," she called after me, but I was already pushing through toward the exit. Outside, the cool night air filled my lungs. I loosened my tie and leaned against the brick wall, trying to make sense of the knot in my chest. Emily's strange behavior, her unusual energy, the lingering glances with this Marcus person. Individually, they might mean nothing. Together, they felt like stepping across a boundary into dangerous territory. I just didn't know how dangerous yet. The sizzle of bacon greeted me before I even opened my eyes. I blinked at the ceiling, surprised by the morning light streaming through our bedroom windows. Saturday mornings usually meant Emily buried under blankets until at least 10, not up cooking breakfast before 8. I shuffled into the kitchen in my pajamas to find my wife actually humming, while flipping pancakes. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, wisps framing her face. She looked radiant. "Morning, sleepyhead," she smiled, sliding a plate of perfectly golden pancakes across the counter. "Coffee's fresh." "What's all this?" I asked, accepting the coffee mug she pressed into my hands. "Can't a wife make breakfast for her husband?" Her tone was light, playful even. "A wife who normally threatens bodily harm if awakened before 9 on weekends? It's unexpected." Emily laughed and turned back to the stove. "I just woke up feeling good today. The party was fun, right? I'm glad you got to meet some of my colleagues." I hadn't actually met anyone. I'd spent the evening either watching her from afar or standing awkwardly by the window. And I definitely hadn't met Marcus. "Yeah, it was illuminating," I said, pouring syrup over my pancakes. As I took my first bite, Emily's phone vibrated on the counter. Then again. And a third time in quick succession. She practically lunged for it, snatching it away before I could glimpse the screen. "Work," she said without looking up, her thumbs flying across the keyboard. "Johnson needs the quarterly projections by Monday." "On Saturday morning?" "You know how it is with the new management." She locked her phone and slipped it into her pocket, not back onto the counter where it usually lived during breakfast. Some of us actually have demanding jobs. The barb stung more than it should have. My job as an architectural consultant might not involve weekend emergencies, but it wasn't exactly filing paperwork either. "How's the food?" she asked, changing subjects with practiced ease. "Delicious," I admitted. It was. Whatever was going on with Emily, her culinary skills had certainly improved. "When did you learn to make pancakes like this?" "YouTube," she said quickly. "I've been watching cooking videos during lunch breaks." She'd never mentioned cooking videos before. Over the next week, small changes accumulated like snowflakes before an avalanche. Emily started taking her phone into the bathroom during showers. She installed a passcode, just for security, she claimed. She carried it constantly, even to take out the trash. Then came the gym membership. 5 times a week? I asked, looking at the premium plan she'd signed up for. "You usually complain about going twice." "I'm just trying to take better care of myself," she said, modeling new workout clothes that still had tags attached. "I want to feel good in my body again." "You've always looked beautiful to me," I said, meaning it. Something like guilt flickered across her face. "That's sweet, but this is for me. I need to make some changes." The late night started soon after. Team dinners, work events, drinks with colleagues I'd never heard of. Each time she returned, her cheeks flushed, smelling of unfamiliar perfume, Sarah's new scent I tried a sample, or with her hair slightly mussed, "It's windy downtown." Thursday evening I was heating leftover pasta when she texted, "Running late. Team dinner with the new director. Don't wait up." I stared at my phone, a cold feeling spreading through my chest. Director. Marcus? The tall stranger from the party? Who goes to team dinners 3 times a week? I asked the empty kitchen. Our cat, Pepper, blinked sympathetically from her perch on the counter. I called Emily's closest colleague, Diane, under the pretense of arranging a surprise for Emily's upcoming birthday. "Actually, we haven't had any team events lately," Diane said. "Budget cuts, you know? We've all been eating sad desk lunches for weeks." After hanging up, I paced our apartment, my mind racing with possibilities, each worse than the last. I tried to focus on the television, a book, mindless internet scrolling, anything to distract from the gnawing feeling in my stomach. When Emily finally came home after 11, she was bubbly, animated, telling an elaborate story about the restaurant's terrible service. "And then Marcus, you remember him from the party? He told the waiter that the salmon was undercooked, but so politely the guy couldn't even be offended." My blood froze. "Marcus was there?" "Well, yes, he's the new director I mentioned." She removed her earrings, avoiding my gaze. "The whole team was there." "That's not what Diane said." Emily's hands stilled. "You called Diane? Why would you do that?" "I was thinking about your birthday," I lied just as easily as she had. "Wanted to coordinate." "My birthday is 4 months away, James. I like to plan ahead." She studied me for a long moment. "Diane probably forgot. She's been stressed about her mother's health issues. Diane's mother died 3 years ago. You sent flowers to the funeral." Emily's face hardened. It was obviously a different colleague then. "I don't appreciate the interrogation over a simple work dinner." She stalked to the bathroom, locking the door behind her. I heard the shower start, knew she'd be in there a while. Just long enough to text someone without interruption. I stared at the ceiling that night, listening to Emily's steady breathing beside me, feeling like I was sleeping next to a stranger. Tomorrow she'd mention going to yoga with her friend Kara. I hadn't seen Kara in months. I made a decision in the darkness, one that felt both wrong and absolutely necessary. Tomorrow I would follow my wife. Surprise visits used to be our thing. Early in our relationship, I'd show up at Emily's office with lunch, and her face would light up like I'd brought her the moon. 5 years into marriage, I hoped that spark wasn't completely extinguished. Emily had mentioned a late meeting followed by a team dinner, the third this week. My suspicions had festered long enough. It was time for action. I picked up her favorite sushi from Takashi's and drove downtown to her office building, a gleaming 20-story glass tower. Nerves twisted my stomach as the elevator climbed to the 14th floor. I hadn't visited in over a year, not since her company's holiday party where she'd introduced me to colleagues whose names I'd immediately forgotten. The reception area was empty except for a security guard and a young man at the front desk, his tie loosened, clearly ready for the day to end. "I'm here to surprise my wife with dinner," I said, holding up the takeout bag. "Emily Matthews in marketing." He glanced at his computer. "Sorry, sir. The marketing department cleared out around 6. Friday policy, early dismissal." My smile froze. "That's impossible. She has a team dinner tonight." "No team events scheduled," he said, turning the monitor so I could see the calendar. "Building closes at 8 on Fridays. Maybe in the conference room downstairs?" I suggested, desperate for an explanation that wouldn't confirm my fears. "Nothing booked." He gave me a sympathetic look that said he'd seen this scenario before. "Sorry, man." I mumbled thanks and retreated to the elevator, my reflection fractured in its mirrored walls. The sushi in my hand suddenly felt ridiculous. Back in my car, I stared at the office building, its windows glowing like honeycomb cells in the dusk. I pulled out my phone and opened our shared credit card app. The most recent transaction glared at me, $112 at Vespri, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown. Timestamp, 47 minutes ago. My hands trembled as I programmed the address into my GPS. The drive felt surreal, like I was watching someone else navigate through traffic, someone else parking across from the restaurant with its warm lighting and white tablecloths. I sat in my car and waited, the sushi forgotten on the passenger seat. People came and went, couples laughing, business associates shaking hands. No sign of Emily. At 9:34 she emerged, but not alone. Marcus walked beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back with casual intimacy. They paused under a streetlight and he said something that made her laugh. That same musical laugh I'd heard at the party, the one that had become so rare at home. I sank lower in my seat, heart pounding as they walked to a silver BMW parked down the block. Before getting in, Emily glanced around furtively, then stood on tiptoe to kiss him. Not a friendly peck, but a lingering kiss that confirmed everything. I should have confronted them right there. Instead, I followed at a safe distance as they drove to a coffee shop in a neighborhood 20 minutes from our apartment. My hands shook so badly I could barely operate my phone's camera. Through the window, I captured several blurry photos of them sitting close, Emily's hand occasionally touching his arm, the same way she touched him at the party. Their expressions were relaxed, intimate, comfortable in a way that spoke of established routine, not a first dalliance. After an hour, I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I drove home and arrived 20 minutes before Emily, just enough time to shower away the scent of betrayal and failure that seemed to cling to me. When she walked through the door, her cheeks were flushed with happiness. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and smiled at me, the woman I'd built my life with, now a consummate liar. "How was yoga with Kara?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Amazing," she said, setting down her gym bag. "I finally mastered crow pose. Kara says hi, by the way." The casual lie sliced through me. "That's great. Did you get dinner after?" "Just a protein shake," she said, heading for the shower. "Kara's on this new cleanse thing. Wouldn't shut up about it." The bathroom door closed and I sat motionless on the couch, replaying the evening in my mind. The empty office. The restaurant. The kiss under the streetlight. The coffee shop. Each memory a nail in the coffin of our marriage. I checked my phone, scrolling through the blurry photos I'd taken. In one, Emily was laughing, her head tilted back, more carefree than I'd seen her in months. In another, Marcus was leaning forward, his expression intent, like every word she spoke was fascinating. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay beside Emily, cataloging every unexplained late night, every sudden work emergency, every yoga session with Kara. How long had it been going on? Weeks? Months? Had our entire marriage been a lie? By morning I'd made my decision. If I was going to confront Emily, I needed undeniable evidence. No more blurry photos through coffee shop windows. No more suspicions she could dismiss or explain away. As Emily announced her plans to meet Kara again that evening, I nodded and kissed her cheek like nothing was wrong. "Have fun," I said, already planning my next move. I needed a professional. Someone who could gather the kind of evidence that would make denial impossible. Tomorrow I would find a private investigator. Gray clouds hung low over the city, matching my mood as I parked across from Emily's gym. The sleek building with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern architecture seemed to mock me. $70 a month for a premium membership she'd insisted on. Now I understood why. I slumped lower in my seat, adjusting my baseball cap and sunglasses. The disguise felt ridiculous, but the thought of Emily spotting me was worse than feeling like a cliché from a bad detective movie. The clock on my dashboard read 5:30. Emily had left home at 4:15, gym bag slung over her shoulder, cheerfully announcing she was meeting Kara for a yoga class, then grabbing dinner. "Don't wait up," she'd called, blowing me a kiss before closing the door. The casual ease of her deception made my stomach turn. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss about a project deadline, but I ignored it. Everything felt insignificant compared to the unraveling of my marriage. Rain began to patter against the windshield as I waited, the rhythmic drops hypnotic. I found myself wondering when exactly I'd lost her. Was it something I'd done? Something I hadn't? Had I been too absorbed in work, too predictable, too safe? The questions circled like vultures. At 6:42 the gym's doors slid open and Emily emerged, but not in her workout clothes. She wore jeans and a blouse I'd never seen before, her hair perfectly styled, not the messy ponytail of someone fresh from exercise. And she wasn't alone. Marcus walked beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. He wore casual clothes that somehow still looked expensive, and carried a small paper bag that he handed to Emily. She peered inside, her face lighting up with delight. My hands clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. What was in the bag? Jewelry? Some intimate gift that he knew she'd love because she'd told him things she never shared with me? They stopped beside his BMW, the same one from the other night. Emily looked around quickly before accepting the bag, a secretive smile playing on her lips. I snapped several photos with my phone, the camera sound muted. The images were clearer than my previous attempts, capturing the intimate familiarity between them. Instead of driving away, they walked together toward a small cafe on the corner. I waited until they were inside before following, choosing a table outside under an awning where the rain couldn't reach. Through the window I could see them clearly, sitting close together at a corner table. A waitress approached my table. "Coffee? Black, please," I said, not taking my eyes off the scene inside. Emily was laughing, gesturing animatedly. I'd forgotten what she looked like when she was truly happy. I took more photos, methodical now, building my case. Emily reaching across the table to touch Marcus's hand. Marcus brushing a strand of hair from her face. The easy intimacy of people who had crossed all boundaries. They spent an hour in the cafe before leaving together, walking back to his car. This time, Marcus opened the passenger door for her, a gesture I'd always done that she'd always appreciated. My chest tightened as they drove away. I followed at a safe distance, grateful for the rain that made tailing them less conspicuous. They drove to a neighborhood I didn't recognize, parking in front of a modern apartment building with a doorman. I watched as they entered together, Marcus's hand on the small of Emily's back, proprietary, intimate. This was it. The final confirmation I didn't want but needed. They weren't just meeting for coffee or dinner. They were going to his place. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, rain drumming on the roof before I could bring myself to drive home. The house felt emptier than ever, Pepper meowing questioningly as I entered without Emily. "Just us tonight, girl," I said, my voice hollow in the quiet space. I busied myself with mindless tasks, washing dishes, sorting mail, anything to keep from thinking about what Emily and Marcus might be doing. But the images intruded anyway, torturous in their detail. When Emily finally came home at 11:20, she looked relaxed and refreshed. No gym tiredness, no post-yoga glow. She smelled of unfamiliar cologne and carried a small paper bag, the one Marcus had given her. "How was yoga?" I asked, hating the forced normalcy in my voice. "So good," she sighed, setting down her things. "Kara's getting really into the spiritual side of it now. Lots of meditation. It's actually really centering." I nodded, watching her carefully fold her jacket, the one she hadn't been wearing when she left. "And dinner?" "This new vegan place Kara wanted to try." She wrinkled her nose. "Not really my thing, but the wine was decent." Lies stacked upon lies. I wanted to confront her then, to throw the photos in her face, to demand the truth. But some stubborn part of me needed more, needed evidence so incontrovertible that she couldn't possibly deny it. "You seem happy," I said, the words sticking in my throat. "I am," she replied, and for once she wasn't lying. "I think the exercise is really helping with my stress levels." That night, as Emily slept soundly beside me, I made two decisions. First, I would hire the best private investigator I could find. And second, I would plan my revenge with the same careful attention to detail that Emily had applied to her deception. The next morning, I had a name: Frank Reynolds, PI, with a reputation for discretion and thoroughness. It was time to get professional help. Frank Reynolds operated out of a small office above a diner in a part of town I rarely visited. The building had seen better days, with peeling paint and a staircase that creaked under my weight. But the reviews online had been stellar: thorough, discreet, and most importantly, gets results. His office door bore no name, just a number. I knocked twice. "It's open," called a gruff voice from inside. Frank was nothing like the slick private investigators from movies. In his 50s, with a salt and pepper beard and reading glasses perched on his nose, he looked more like a history professor than a man who exposed secrets for a living. His desk was organized chaos: files, a laptop, and 3 empty coffee cups. "You must be James," he said, closing a folder as I entered. "Have a seat." I sat in the worn leather chair across from him, suddenly unsure where to begin. "So," Frank leaned back, studying me with sharp eyes, "your wife is cheating on you." It wasn't a question. The bluntness made me flinch, but also relieved me of having to say the words aloud. "I believe so, yes," I said, pulling out my phone. "I have photos." Frank held up a hand. "Before we get to that, tell me what made you suspicious in the first place." For 20 minutes, I detailed the changes in Emily's behavior: the late nights, the new clothes, the protective attitude toward her phone, the inconsistencies in her stories. Frank listened without interruption, occasionally jotting notes in a small pad. When I finished, he nodded. "Now let's see those photos." I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the images I'd taken outside the cafe and near Marcus's apartment building, his expression unreadable. "Amateur work," he said, handing back the phone, "but not bad. You're lucky they didn't spot you. So you'll take the case?" "I will." He named his fee: steep but worth it for concrete proof. "I'll need access to her schedule, phone records if possible, and any shared financial information." I'd come prepared. I pulled out our joint bank statements and credit card bills from the past 3 months, spreading them across his desk. "She doesn't know I monitor these," I explained, pointing to several highlighted charges. Restaurant bills when she claimed to be working late. A hotel charge when she was supposedly at a company retreat. Frank's eyebrows rose as he examined a charge from Bella Boutique, a lingerie store Emily and I had never visited together. "And this one," I said, pointing to a spa treatment at an upscale hotel. $400 for a couple's massage. We haven't gone to a spa together in years." Frank gathered the statements into a folder. "This is a good start. I'll need a few days to establish patterns, get photos, maybe plant a tracker on her car." "Is that legal?" He gave me a look that made me regret asking. "You want results or a clean conscience?" I chose results. Back home, I threw myself into work during the day, attempting to maintain normalcy. But at night, I became a detective in my own right. While Emily slept, I carefully examined our bank accounts online, documenting each unexplained expense in a password-protected file. The evidence mounted quickly. A midday charge at a wine bar when she was supposedly in meetings. A boutique hotel charge labeled as office supplies on our shared credit card. Emily was growing careless, or perhaps just confident I wouldn't notice. 2 days after meeting Frank, I received a text: "Follow her tomorrow. Bar on 8th Street. 7 p.m. We'll meet you there with preliminary evidence." That night at dinner, Emily mentioned meeting Kara for drinks after work. "Girls' night," she said brightly, twirling pasta around her fork. "Kara's having issues with Rick again, needs to vent." I nodded sympathetically, marveling at how naturally the lies came to her now. "Tell her I said hi." "I will." Emily smiled, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "Don't wait up, okay? These sessions with Kara can go late." The following evening, I parked near the upscale bar where Frank had directed me. At 6:45, Emily's car pulled into the lot. She checked her makeup in the rearview mirror before stepping out, wearing a dress I'd never seen, deep red, clinging to every curve. I waited until she entered before texting Frank, "She's here. Black Audi just parked. She's wearing a red dress." He responded immediately, "Inside already. Corner booth." Order a drink at the bar, don't look at their table. Heart pounding, I entered the bar 5 minutes later. The lighting was dim, the atmosphere intimate. I took a seat at the bar with my back to the room, ordered a whiskey and watched the mirror behind the bottles. In its reflection I spotted them immediately. Emily and Marcus sat close together in a corner booth, his arm draped casually around her shoulders. She laughed at something he said, then leaned in to kiss him, not a quick peck but a lingering kiss that twisted my insides. Frank sat 2 tables away, sipping a drink, a small camera discreetly placed on his table. He caught my eye in the mirror and gave an almost imperceptible nod. I nursed my whiskey for 45 excruciating minutes, watching my wife and her lover in the mirror's reflection. They shared food from the same plate, drank from the same glass, touched constantly, small, intimate gestures that spoke of an established relationship. When they finally left together, Frank followed. I waited 10 minutes before driving home, my mind oddly calm despite the storm raging inside. The next day, a thick envelope waited in my mailbox, Frank's preliminary report. Inside were dozens of high-quality photos. Emily and Marcus entering his apartment building, having dinner at exclusive restaurants, shopping together, even checking into a boutique hotel. The evidence was undeniable. Now I had to decide what to do with it. Frank's office seemed smaller the second time, more cramped with the weight of what I was about to hear. The private investigator sat across from me, his expression grim as he laid out a folder thick with photos and documents. "It's worse than you thought," he said, sliding the folder toward me. "They've been meeting 3 to 4 times a week for at least the past 2 months, based on electronic records and surveillance." I opened the folder, my hands steady despite the churning in my stomach. The first photo showed Emily and Marcus entering a hotel, her hand in his back pocket, his arm around her waist. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago, a Tuesday when she'd claimed to be working late on a presentation. "Hotel receipts show they've stayed overnight 4 times, Frank continued, pointing to printed statements. "Always paid in cash, but I have contacts in hospitality." Photo after photo documented their relationship in merciless detail. Emily and Marcus at restaurants I'd never taken her to. Emily entering his apartment building in the middle of the day. Marcus carrying shopping bags while Emily tried on clothes in a boutique window. Then came the most damning evidence. Photos of them in Marcus's apartment, taken with a telephoto lens through his uncurtained windows. Emily in his kitchen, cooking in one of his shirts. The 2 of them dancing in his living room, her head on his shoulder. Intimate moments that should have been ours. "There's more," Frank said, pulling out his phone. "I installed tracking software when you gave me access to your shared cloud account." He showed me a map with dozens of red pins, locations where Emily had been over the past week. Her office was there, but so was Marcus's apartment, 3 different hotels and restaurants across town. "And these are the text messages I recovered," he added, handing me printouts. "Warning, they're not easy to read." The messages confirmed everything. Plans for their meetings. Inside jokes. Complaints about having to lie to me. Intimate details I couldn't bear to read fully. "I'm sorry," Frank said, and I believed he meant it. "For what it's worth, this is one of the more blatant cases I've seen. She's not even trying to be careful anymore." I nodded, my mind already shifting from shock to something colder, more calculated. "What would you do if you were me?" Frank leaned back in his chair. "Most clients either leave quietly or confront their spouse privately. But you seem like you want something else." "I want her to feel what I'm feeling," I admitted, the words sounding strange in my own voice. "The humiliation. The betrayal. There's a reason public revelation isn't common," Frank warned. "It's messy, unpredictable. But if that's your goal?" He didn't need to finish. We both knew what I wanted. "Our friends are hosting a party this weekend," I said slowly. "Everyone will be there, including some of her colleagues. Marcus probably won't come, they're still being somewhat discreet, but everyone she cares about will witness it." Frank didn't try to talk me out of it. Instead, he helped me plan, transferring the most damning photos and messages to a flash drive. "Whatever happens after this," he said as I was leaving, "remember you didn't cause this situation. She did." Those words stayed with me as I went through the motions of normalcy at home. Emily noticed nothing unusual, too absorbed in her double life to see the coldness behind my smiles, the purpose behind my questions about the upcoming party. "Are you sure you want to go?" she asked over breakfast. "You usually hate these work-adjacent social things." "I think it's important to support each other," I replied, watching her face for any flicker of guilt. There was none. "Besides, I like your friends." "That's sweet," she said, patting my hand. "Wear your gray suit," the one that makes your eyes look silver. The party was at Michael and Sarah's spacious downtown loft. Michael worked with Emily and had recently been promoted, hence the celebration. As we arrived, Emily was immediately swept into conversation with colleagues, leaving me to navigate the crowd alone. I found David, the event coordinator Michael had hired, and slipped him the flash drive along with $200. About an hour in, right after the toast, I instructed, as we'd arranged by email earlier. Just play it on the main screen. No introduction, no warning. David nodded, pocketing the cash. Consider it done. I circulated through the party, accepting drinks, making small talk, all while watching the minutes tick by. Emily glowed across the room, laughing with her work friends, occasionally catching my eye to smile or wink. Each gesture felt like a fresh betrayal. After Michael's toast to his promotion, the lights dimmed slightly for the planned slideshow of company memories. Instead, the large screen filled with the first photo from my flash drive. Emily and Marcus entering a hotel, date and time clearly visible. The room didn't fall silent immediately. Conversations continued for a few seconds before the first gasps and whispers began. Then came the next photo and the next, Emily and Marcus kissing in his car, Emily wearing his shirt in his apartment, Emily entering a hotel room. Finally, excerpts from their text messages appeared, large enough for everyone to read. The most intimate details of their affair displayed in cold, digital clarity. I watched Emily's face transform as she realized what was happening. Confusion, shock, horror, and finally, a look of pure betrayal as she sought me out in the crowd. Our eyes met across the room filled with her colleagues, friends, and acquaintances, all now witnesses to her secret life. Without saying a word, I set down my glass and walked toward the exit. The room had fallen completely silent except for the sound of my footsteps and Emily's frantic voice calling my name. I didn't look back as I stepped into the cool night air, leaving her to face the consequences of her choices. The night air felt clean against my face after the suffocating tension of the party. I made it halfway down the block before I heard the frantic click of heels behind me. James? Stop right now. I kept walking, each step carrying me further from the life I'd known, from the woman I thought I'd married. How dare you? Emily's voice cracked like a whip in the quiet street. How dare you humiliate me like that? I turned slowly to face her. Mascara streaked down her flushed cheeks, her carefully styled hair now disheveled. Even in her fury and shame, she was beautiful. That somehow made it worse. Humiliate you? My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, calm when I felt anything but. That's what concerns you? The humiliation. You had no right. She jabbed a finger toward my chest, keeping several feet between us as if I were dangerous. You could have confronted me privately. You could have. What? Given you a chance to lie more? Craft another story about working late or yoga with Kara? I laughed, the sound hollow in the night air. You had months to tell me the truth, Emily. Months of looking me in the eye while you built a life with him. It wasn't like that. Her voice dropped, a hint of desperation creeping in. It just happened. I didn't plan it. Bullshit. The profanity felt good, necessary. Nothing just happens for 3 months. Hotel rooms don't book themselves. Lingerie doesn't buy itself. You made choices, Emily. Hundreds of them. Every time you texted him. Every time you lied about where you were going. Every time you slept with him, then came home to our bed. She flinched at the last part as if I'd struck her. Good. Let her feel something real for once. You don't understand, she said, her voice quieter now. You have no idea what it's been like. Then explain it to me. I spread my arms wide. I'm all ears. Tell me why you decided to betray everything we built together. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking small against the backdrop of the city lights. You've been boring for years, James. We've been boring. The same routines, the same conversations, the same predictable life. Her words hit like physical blows, each one finding its mark. You used to have dreams, she continued. Remember? Traveling, starting your own firm, taking risks. Then you settled into that safe job with those safe colleagues, making safe choices. I felt like I was suffocating in all that safety. So this is my fault? I asked incredulously. I'm responsible for your infidelity because I provided stability? No, but... She hesitated. Marcus made me feel alive again. Excited. Valued for more than just being a dependable wife in a dependable marriage. And you couldn't talk to me about that? About feeling unfulfilled? You jumped straight to betraying me instead of having a conversation? I tried. Her voice rose again. For years I tried suggesting trips, new restaurants, even marriage counseling once. You always had a reason why it wasn't practical, wasn't the right time. The worst part was the grain of truth in her accusations. I had become comfortable, had put security ahead of adventure. But that didn't justify what she'd done. You don't get to rewrite our history to justify your choices, I said firmly. If you were unhappy you could have left. But you chose to lie. To cheat. To humiliate me by flaunting your affair around town while thinking I was too oblivious to notice. And you chose to humiliate me in front of everyone I know, she shot back. You're no better than I am. The difference is I own my choices. I wanted you to feel what I've been feeling, to know what it's like when the floor drops out from under you, when everyone is watching your world collapse. Emily laughed bitterly. You think this makes you strong? It makes you vindictive. Cruel. And what does your behavior make you? I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. A terrible one. But I didn't set out to destroy you. Neither did I replied quietly. I set out to show you exactly who you've become. Someone who can look her husband in the eye and lie without hesitation. Someone who can build a secret life and feel entitled to it. So what happens now? She asked, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. Are you feeling better? Did your little revenge plot give you the satisfaction you wanted? This isn't about satisfaction, Emily. It's about consequences. You wouldn't have faced any if I'd confronted you privately. You'd have cried, apologized, maybe even convinced me to try again. Then you'd have gotten better at hiding it. You don't know that. But her eyes told me I'd guessed correctly. I know you better than you think. Even now. I took a step back. The divorce papers will be ready next week. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight. You can't just throw me out. That's our home. It was our home, I corrected her. Before you brought him into it with every lie, every text, every time you came home smelling like his cologne. You would never have left me, she said, her voice hardening. You're too weak, too afraid of being alone. That's why I had to lie. Because you would have clung to us no matter how miserable we both were. The accusation stung because, again, there was a kernel of truth to it. I had been afraid of losing her, of facing life without the woman I'd built everything around. You're right, I admitted. I was weak. But not anymore. I turned and walked away, her voice calling after me, growing more desperate with each step I took. This time I didn't look back. The silence of our apartment hit me as soon as I opened the door. Pepper meowed questioningly from her perch on the bookshelf, her yellow eyes following me as I moved through rooms that suddenly felt both familiar and foreign. I didn't bother turning on all the lights. Instead, I went straight to our bedroom and pulled out my old gym duffel from the closet. With mechanical precision, I filled it with essentials. A week's worth of clothes, toiletries, my laptop, important documents. The wedding photo on our dresser caught my eye, and I paused, studying our younger, hopeful faces. With deliberate care, I placed it face down. Pepper jumped onto the bed, her tail swishing anxiously as she watched me pack. Don't worry, I told her, scratching behind her ears. I'll come back for you once I'm settled. I left a note for Emily with my lawyer's contact information, then took one last look around the space we'd called home for 5 years. The furniture we'd picked together, the art collected from weekend trips, the marks on the wall where we'd measured Pepper's climbing abilities, all of it now tainted by her betrayal. My phone buzzed continuously as I drove to the hotel I'd booked earlier that day, a precaution I'd hoped wouldn't be necessary but had prepared for anyway. Emily's name flashed on the screen repeatedly, each call sent straight to voicemail. After the 15th attempt, I silenced the phone completely. The hotel room was sterile and impersonal, exactly what I needed. No memories, no shared history, just clean sheets and anonymity. I fell onto the bed fully clothed, suddenly exhausted beyond words. Sleep came instantly, dreamless and heavy. The next morning, I woke to 37 missed calls, 22 text messages, and 3 voicemails. I ignored them all and instead called my bank to change access codes and passwords for our joint accounts. Not to cut Emily off completely, I wasn't that vindictive, but to protect myself until the divorce proceedings clarified our financial separation. My lawyer, Patricia Henderson, fit me in for a morning appointment. Her office was warm and comfortable, designed to ease the tension of clients facing the dissolution of their marriages. You have ample evidence, she said after reviewing Frank's report and photos. This will be straightforward if she doesn't contest it. Will the public nature of the revelation cause problems? I asked. Patricia pursed her lips. It's unusual but not legally significant. Some judges might view it as unnecessarily vindictive, but given the extent of her deception, I don't anticipate it being a major factor. I nodded, relieved. How long will this take? If she cooperates, we could finalize in a few months. If not, she left the sentence hanging. I left with a preliminary divorce filing in motion and Patricia's assurance that Emily would be served papers by the end of the week. The businesslike approach to ending a marriage felt surreal, reducing years of love and shared dreams to asset divisions and legal terminology. Back at the hotel, I finally checked Emily's messages. James, please come home so we can talk. This is ridiculous, you're overreacting. Everyone makes mistakes. We can work through this. Please call me back. I'm worried about you. The last message, sent at 3 in the morning, was different. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that. I deleted them all, then blocked her number. The relief was immediate, like lancing an infected wound. That evening, Emily somehow tracked down my hotel. The front desk called to say my wife was in the lobby, insisting on seeing me. I told them I wasn't accepting visitors. 10 minutes later, my room phone rang. James, this is childish. Emily's voice had that reasonable tone she used when trying to manage a situation. We had a fight. It happens. Can we please talk like adults? I filed for divorce today, I said flatly. My lawyer will contact you. A sharp intake of breath. You can't be serious. After everything we've built? You're throwing it all away over one mistake. It wasn't one mistake, Emily. It was hundreds of deliberate choices over months. And you're still lying to yourself about it. I've ended things with Marcus, she said quickly. Completely. It's over. Congratulations, I replied. That must have been a difficult 5 hours for you. You're being cruel. No, I'm being honest. Something you might try sometime. Pause. Let me come up. We can talk face to face. There's nothing left to say. I've changed the banking passwords and canceled your access to our joint credit cards. I'll pay the mortgage until we sell the house, but any personal expenses are your responsibility now. You can't just cut me off financially. Her voice rose in panic. That's not fair. Check your personal account. I've transferred half our savings. That should tide you over until we finalize everything. Another pause, longer this time. You've really thought this through, haven't you? I've had plenty of time to think while you were with Marcus. She sighed, a sound I once found endearing but now recognized as calculating. Can we at least be civil? For the sake of our history together? Civil, yes. Friends, no. Please don't contact me directly again. Everything should go through our lawyers. I hung up before she could respond, knowing any further conversation would be manipulation disguised as reconciliation. For the first time since discovering her affair, I felt truly in control. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, unburdened by suspicion and lies. The next stage of my life had begun, and despite the pain, it felt like stepping into open air after being trapped in a slowly collapsing tunnel. 3 days after moving into the hotel, I found a furnished short-term apartment in a neighborhood across town. It was small but modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. Nothing like the cozy, cluttered space Emily and I had created together. That was precisely why I chose it. The silence was the hardest adjustment. No Emily humming in the kitchen. No pepper patting across hardwood floors. Just the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic below. I filled the quiet with podcasts and music, anything to keep my thoughts from circling back to what I'd lost. A week into my new life, Frank called. Thought you might want to know, he said without preamble. Marcus is leaving town. Apparently, your public reveal caused some professional complications for him. What kind of complications? I asked, surprised by how little satisfaction I felt at the news. Turns out his company has strict policies about relationships with employees at partner firms. Emily's company being one of them. Someone sent those photos to his HR department. I didn't do that, I said quickly. Never said you did. Frank paused. But someone at that party clearly decided to spread the news. Word is he's relocating to the Chicago office. Effective immediately. After hanging up, I stood at the window watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. I should have felt vindicated knowing Marcus was experiencing consequences too, but instead I felt strangely empty. The revenge I'd orchestrated had seemed so important, so necessary, but now it felt hollow, a momentary satisfaction that did nothing to heal the real wound. That night, I deleted Emily's contact from my phone. Her name had stared at me from my blocked callers list, a daily reminder of betrayal. Watching it disappear felt like removing a splinter, a small but significant relief. The following week, I booked a cabin by the lake 2 hours from the city. Not a planned vacation, just an impulsive need to be somewhere else, somewhere without memories or associations. I packed light, brought groceries, and told no one where I was going. The cabin was rustic and isolated, perched on a bluff overlooking water so still it perfectly mirrored the surrounding pines. No television, spotty cell service, just a small gas fireplace and shelves lined with paperbacks left by previous guests. For 3 days I spoke to no one. I hiked until my legs ached, napped in the afternoon sun on the small deck, and at night I sat by the fire with a notebook, writing out everything I couldn't say aloud. The anger, the humiliation, the fear of starting over. The secret relief that I no longer had to pretend our marriage was something it hadn't been for a long time. On the 4th morning, I woke before dawn and watched the sun rise over the lake, painting the water gold and pink. A loon called somewhere in the distance, its haunting cry echoing across the water. For the first time since discovering Emily's betrayal, I felt fully present, anchored in the moment rather than drowning in what had happened or what might come next. I returned to the city with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something manageable, a dull ache rather than a searing wound. Back in my temporary apartment, I established routines. Morning runs along the river. Coffee at a small shop where no one knew my name or my story. Focused hours of work, taking on projects I'd previously avoided as too challenging or time-consuming. Evening calls with my sister across the country, who listened without judgment as I gradually shared pieces of what had happened. "Have you heard from her?" my sister asked during one call. "Not directly. Her lawyer contacted mine. She's not contesting anything." "That's surprising." "Is it?" I stared out at the city lights. She wanted out. She just didn't have the courage to say it. "Do you hate her?" my sister asked quietly. The question made me pause. "No," I realized. "I'm angry. I'm hurt. But hate would mean I still care enough to invest that kind of energy. I'm working toward indifference." The divorce proceedings moved forward with unexpected smoothness. Emily agreed to an equitable division of assets. She kept the apartment since her job was nearby. I kept most of our savings to start fresh. We split the furniture based on who had brought what into the marriage, with a few exceptions. She wanted the living room set we'd bought together. I wanted Pepper. Patricia called one afternoon with an update. "Everything's on track. Should be finalized within a month if this cooperation continues." "Has she given any explanation?" I asked, not sure why I even cared. "Not officially," Patricia hesitated. "But her lawyer mentioned she's in therapy. Reading between the lines, I think she realizes she's not the victim here." After the call, I found myself looking at old photos for the first time since leaving. Images of Emily and me in happier times, hiking in Colorado, celebrating my promotion, holding Pepper the day we adopted her. The memories no longer felt like daggers. They were just moments that had happened to someone I used to be. That night, I deleted the entire photo album from my phone. Not out of anger or spite, but as an acknowledgement that those memories belonged to the past. The future, uncertain as it was, waited ahead, and I was finally ready to step toward it. The invitation arrived via text message on a Tuesday morning. "Jeff's birthday drinks, Friday at Cooper's, 8 p.m. No gifts, just show up. We miss your face." I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. Social gatherings had been the first casualty of my divorce. I'd avoided our mutual friends, unwilling to navigate the awkward conversations or witness the careful way they'd avoid mentioning Emily. But 2 months had passed since the papers were finalized. It was time to reclaim parts of my old life without letting it define my new one. "Count me in," I replied before I could talk myself out of it. Friday arrived with unexpected butterflies in my stomach. I stood before the mirror in my new apartment, a bright corner unit I'd purchased with my portion of our savings, and straightened the collar of my blue button-down. Pepper wound between my legs, purring loudly. "What do you think?" I asked her. "Too formal?" "Not formal enough." She blinked slowly in response, which I chose to interpret as approval. Cooper's was a familiar neighborhood bar with exposed brick walls and vintage concert posters. The kind of place where you could actually hear conversations without shouting. I arrived deliberately 15 minutes late, hoping to avoid the awkwardness of being first. Jeff spotted me immediately, waving from a large table in the corner. "The prodigal friend returns?" he called, pulling me into a bear hug. "Damn good to see you, man." One by one, old friends greeted me, some with hugs, others with hearty handshakes, all with genuine warmth. The questions I dreaded never materialized. No one asked about Emily or the divorce. Instead, they folded me back into the group as if I'd never left, updating me on jobs, relationships, and the latest neighborhood gossip. I was nursing my second beer when I noticed her, a woman with dark curly hair sitting across the table, laughing at something Jeff's wife had said. She wasn't a stranger. I'd met her years ago at another gathering, but we'd never really talked. "Sarah, right?" I said when there was a lull in conversation. "You work in urban planning?" She looked pleasantly surprised. "Good memory. Though I've switched to environmental impact assessment since we last met." Her smile reached her eyes, warm, intelligent eyes that held contact just long enough to create a small current of electricity between us. The evening flowed easily after that. Sarah and I discovered shared interests in hiking, obscure documentaries, and terrible science fiction movies. She had a quick wit and a genuine laugh, the kind that made others want to join in. "So," she said as the gathering began to wind down, "Jeff mentioned you've been through a rough time." I tensed slightly. "Did he give you the full story?" "Just the headlines." She held my gaze. "I don't need the details unless you want to share them." "Maybe another time," I said, surprised to find I meant it. Walking her to her car, I felt a forgotten sense of possibility in the cool night air. Not romance necessarily, it was far too soon for that, but connection. A reminder that life continued to offer new paths when old ones ended. "Would you ever trust someone again?" she asked suddenly, leaning against her car door. "After what happened?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I think it'll take time, but I want to." She nodded as if I'd passed some sort of test. "Good answer. Here's my number," she said, tapping it into my phone. "Use it or don't. No pressure either way." 2 days later, my lawyer emailed to confirm that the house had sold, the proceeds had been divided, and all financial ties with Emily were officially severed. A chapter truly closed. That same afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox, handwritten on cream stationery, Emily's distinctive script flowing across the page. "James, I know we agreed to communicate through lawyers, but with everything finalized, I wanted to thank you for handling this maturely despite the pain I caused. I've been in therapy, facing truths about myself I've long avoided. None of that excuses what I did to you, to us. I won't ask for forgiveness or friendship. I just want you to know that you deserve better than what I gave you, and I hope someday you find it. Emily." No manipulations, no blame shifting, just a simple acknowledgement. It wasn't an apology I'd been waiting for. I'd stopped waiting for anything from her months ago, but it provided a certain symmetry, a period at the end of a complicated sentence. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, then pulled out my phone and scrolled to Sarah's number. Not for a date, not yet, but for coffee, conversation, a gradual step forward. The following weekend, I spontaneously booked a trip to Europe, something Emily and I had talked about for years but never prioritized. 2 weeks in Portugal and Spain, traveling alone, answering to no one's schedule but my own. It felt both terrifying and exhilarating, like so many aspects of my new life. Standing in my apartment on the eve of my departure, I looked around at the clean walls, the fresh start I'd created. Pepper curled on the windowsill, watching the city below. My packed suitcase waited by the door, a symbol of unwritten possibilities. Tomorrow I would board a plane, look out the window as the city shrank beneath me, and face whatever came next, not with certainty, but with an openness I hadn't felt in years. The future stretched before me, undefined but filled with promise, and for the first time in a long time that felt like enough.